We're here with the Comptroller of the state of Maryland, Peter Franchot. How are you, Mr. Comptroller?
Fabulous. Good to see you, Donnie.
Yes, sir. So much has been happening in the world. How's life in your part of the world?
Life is just fine. I'm honored to be the Comptroller of the state of Maryland. It's a great job. I really appreciate all the citizens out there that vote me into office. I'm in my 10th year now, and just trying to do the best as far as watching out for people's money.
What's the most enjoyable part of your job?
Right now, one of the most enjoyable parts is serving on the Board of Public Works, where I get to actually vote every 2 weeks on how the money of the state is spent, because the governor and the treasurer and I vote on the major contracts of the state. And it allows me to be involved in issues where I really think I can make a difference, helping, for example, kids. I mentioned to you this issue of having safe classrooms for kids that are heated during the winter and cooled during the summer months. And on the Board of Public Works, the governor and I have definitely put both our feet down and said to Baltimore City and Baltimore County, get the job done. Put box air conditioning units and where necessary and into classrooms, and put heaters into classrooms where they're needed during the winter. But do not let your kids, just because they're kids that come from, needy backgrounds, don't let them be put into classrooms that are where it's almost impossible to learn. When the affluent kids are in schools that are wonderfully cool during the hot weather and warm during the winter. Because it's unfair to these kids. We say to them, hey, we want you to study hard, we want you to pay attention in class, but we're going to put you in a unheated classroom.
And you think that's a civil right?
Well, not only do I think it is, the head of the Maryland State NAACP wrote a letter to the Justice Department saying, please come in and look at this, because we have 50,000 children generally from low-income backgrounds in Baltimore City and Baltimore County that are in this position of being in these unsafe, overheated classrooms or unheated classrooms. So he described it, Mr. Hainsworth described it as a unmet civil right. I think that was his term. I happen to view it a little bit differently, not so much as a civil right, but just as a human right. And it's a right, it's not a privilege.
Do you ever recall seeing students, when you went to school, seeing students in overheated classrooms or cold classrooms?
Well, back, years ago, it was different. First of all, it wasn't as hot as it is now. We've had all this climate warming and stuff. But the key is that every kid in the state, other than in Baltimore City and Baltimore County, has air conditioning, for example, has climate control. It's just part of going to school in 2016.
I wonder what the problem here is
The problem here is that it got swept under the carpet, and nobody ever gave voice to it and was a conscience for it. And I have picked it up, and I picked it up before some of these folks were elected years ago, and I'm pounding the table, and I'm demanding that it be fixed. I now have an ally, Governor Hogan, of all people. He's a Republican. He's listened to my concern at the Board of Public Works, and he said, yeah, I'm with you, Peter. Let's get this done. So we're reading the Riot Act to Baltimore County and Baltimore City and saying, look, we understand you have, everybody's got tight fiscal situations, but this is just a management problem. This is a leadership problem, and we're going to demand that it get done. We're making a lot of progress. I think at the board meeting next week, the city may have some interesting proposals, and we may be able to relieve some of the pressure that we put on them, because you have to, after a while, you get tired of asking people to do the right thing. So we took $10 million from Baltimore County and said, we're going to hold that until you guys start doing the right thing.
But that's not the picture that we often see on the news. It's usually partisan but it's never really getting into the issue. And as you said, it seems to get swept under the rug.
Yeah, because nobody wants to make an elected official, particularly Democratic elected official, look bad, because everybody's very sensitive to that. I am. I'm a Democrat. I'm an elected official. I'm not indifferent to the needs of politics. But my focus here is on the kids. If you focus on the kids, pretty readily apparent that this is a problem that needs to be fixed yesterday and cannot wait for the 21st century schools to be built 10 years from now. It's got to be done now, and we are making progress on that, so that's good. And we'll see where it all ends up. But if I'd kept my mouth shut and been silent and not said anything and not rocked the boat,
could you do that?
Yeah, it's easy. I mean, you don't have to.
I don't think you could.
You don't have to get agitated or anything. But
I mean, you've had a career as comptroller of being proactive.
yes, and I try to, be a good Democrat because that's the party I'm associated with, and I believe it's a great party. But when it comes between choosing between my fellow elected Democrats and the people, I'm with the people. Come hell or high water.
What was that? When you first became comptroller, was it the rebates? What was it you first focused on? Big thing.
Well, the first big thing was slot machines because we brought they were being introduced at that point into the state of Maryland, and I thought it was a very unfortunate, morally bankrupt way to raise tax revenue by bringing in these Las Vegas casinos, and I fought vigorously against them.
Oh, but Mr. Comptroller, money will go to education.
No.
That's what they said about the lottery.
Right. Well, the lottery, the two biggest zip codes for lottery proceeds are the two poorest jurisdictions in the state, one here in Baltimore City and one down in Prince George's County. They produce more lottery revenues than any other zip codes in the state, and they come from the poorest of the poor who don't have the money, who never win, who are completely duped by the advertising that they might win. And for the state of Maryland, through the lottery, or the state of Maryland in partnership with casinos and slot machines, to do this to its own citizens, I think is a travesty. I lost on that. My party.
I was with you, though. A
I
lot
know
of people
you
were with you.
And there's still a lot of people. And you're right. It didn't go to education. It's all going
To the general fund or something?
Went into the general fund and disappeared into...
$13 billion has been collected from the Maryland State Lottery since its inception. And so when you think of these schools without heat, without air conditioning, it's mind-blowing. And then they came with the same song and dance and dog and pony show with the casinos and the table gambling. Like, education's going to be for education. And they were twisting our representatives' arms and, oh, you got to support slots. They dressed the church up. Not far from here. They dressed the church up to look like a casino.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunately outrageous. It promotes a further deterioration of the inner city because there are very well-meaning people who work hard, who think that they can somehow make it work financially if they go to the slot machines or they go and put their money on the lottery. It's unfortunate, but it doesn't. It's a total. In my opinion, it is a negative on the state that we are involved as a state in these activities. Why? Because we're partnering with people that are taking money out of desperate people's pockets. I mean, for you or I or someone else to spend $20 on the lottery, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
addiction, spending the rent money, the gas and electric money.
Yes, and it creates all sorts of other problems. So my second priority, other than school maintenance, is going to be finance. I want to build a finance academy in Baltimore City.
What's a finance academy?
Finance academy would be something that the private sector would build. My vision is something that would be a world-class and brand new structure made of glass and all the modern amenities. It would be a brand new, spectacular building that people would come and want to visit just because it looks like a museum in downtown Paris or New York City. Something that's just a spectacular design. Inside that building, every 8th grader, 9th grader, 10th grader, 11th grader, and 12th grader in Baltimore City would get exposed to the basics of financial literacy. What a budget is, what compound interest is, what the stock market is, how do you create wealth, how do you protect yourself against being taken advantage of by gambling companies and other practices.
Where'd you get this idea?
Well, I've advocated it for some time because you and I learned all of this in the School of Hard Knocks. Nobody taught us. We just went out and figured out through mistake and error what you have to do to keep your head above water financially. That you can make a lot of mistakes. So this idea of teaching our young people in advance is not a panacea, but a lot of them would really benefit from knowing that you should not take an auto loan out that has, X amount of years.
Well, I thought you were talking about the Sears credit card, 22% interest.
Yeah. So it would
But
benefit
but
that now.
but mining
now,
our dollars.
in other words, helping our young people understand what it is that is great about the private sector system and the genius of the system, and what really to pay attention to and avoid making mistakes. Why am I in favor of this? We've already built one in Prince George's County. The Capital One Bank paid for the building. The Prince George's school system supplies the 8th grade kids. They have a 14-lesson curriculum from junior achievement that is taught by public school teachers in the Prince George's schools. They then spend a week at a finance academy practicing, implementing what they've learned in the class. There's a whole village that's provided for them, manned by private sector volunteers, where they have to negotiate an auto loan, pay utility bills, get a mortgage.
Are adults welcome in this academy?
Oh yeah. Well, that's a good point. And the kids actually, a lot of them love. They love it. They soak this information up because they're very interested in money. Even though a lot of them would kind of say they're not interested in school, but they love this, and they also like talking to their parents about it, because you're right, their parents would know compound interest from anything because it hasn't been taught them. So they can teach them about what it's like.
How'd you get this idea?
Well, it's just something that they had one over in Virginia. I saw it over there. We brought it over to Prince George's. Prince George's is up and running. It's a game-changing facility because all of their kids go through it. It's not just a couple. Okay, Montgomery County likes it so much, they're halfway through building another one.
Another one?
Yeah, in Montgomery County for the Montgomery County kids, because it's all connected to the school system. We need a world-class one.
So I'm
Here in
hearing also
Baltimore City.
public-private partnerships at work.
Yep.
For a viable purpose.
Yeah, and it works, and it's not something you're inventing whole cloth. It actually is up and running. You get a bank, could be M&T, it could be PNC, it could be some other bank up here in Baltimore. They supply the building. You've got Junior Achievement, a huge corporate nonprofit nationally. They provide the curriculum and the volunteers. The Baltimore City school system provides the kids, and they teach the curriculum.
I would think banks would be jumping in line to be the lead sponsor on it, because clearly, just like grooming potential voters, you're grooming potential customers to open up a bank account.
Exactly. It's good business for them, but most of all, they like it because, and Junior Achievement likes it because, business doesn't really work very well when everybody is stressed out and challenged financially, and they can't operate there. They don't become good consumers because they're so out of whack as far as their financial strategy. So to make the system work, it's a very good direction to pursue. It's already up and running in Prince George's. It will be in Montgomery. Baltimore City, I kid people and say I'd like to put the Finance Academy right next to the casino so we could catch everybody, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be near the casino, just somewhere in Baltimore City where people would look at it and say, boy, can we take some community pride in that we're leaving our kids better educated on these fiscal issues than we were.
So maybe I should have just asked you this in the beginning. For those who don't know, what does the Comptroller do?
Comptroller is elected statewide, so that's where my independence comes from. I don't have to kind of be under someone's thumb. I'm under the thumb of the voters, and I'm responsible to them. I collect 3 million tax returns a year and process all of the taxes that Maryland citizens pay to the state, and I collect the local piggyback taxes, etc. Number one. Number two, I'm on the Board of Public Works, which meets every 2 weeks, and we spend 10 to 11 billion dollars in contracts each year through the Board of Public Works. That's a big area and responsibility, and I appreciate the honor of being your comptroller. And then I'm on the vice chairman of the Board of Trustees of the retirement system. That's a $46 billion program for the financial security of our teachers.
It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah,
46, 11,
big.
57
Yeah.
billion.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of money's running around. And then I have a whole bunch of other responsibilities. I regulate alcohol, tobacco, petroleum products. I have a police force. I've got 1,200 employees. 600 of them are in this complex state center. And that's why I'm particularly interested in the building a new, getting them into new space, because this state center is crumbling.
What happened? I thought we were working on a new state center project.
2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, the governor, the treasurer, and I canceled all of the contracts for state center because it was a sweetheart deal negotiated in the previous administration, where it was a public-private partnership between the state of Maryland and a team of private developers, but the problem was that the team of private developers had no skin in the game. So it was all taxpayer money. The entire project was going to be financed through exorbitant, really outrageous rental agreements with the state of Maryland. We would have been the citizens would have been on the hook for decades to pay above market rents for a complex up here that the state would have been better off just doing on its own. So the whole thing kind of crashed on its own. Then the question is, what do you do with State Center? It's a 28-acre site right here in Baltimore. Fabulous opportunity.
Let's just commend you for making a move like that, and as well as the governor, because easily you could have chose to ignore it, but it wasn't good business.
It was a bad deal. That's what it was. I dropped it. I dropped out in 2011. That was 6 years ago. I dropped my support for State Center and said it's a boondoggle. And, it still limped along. It still had 2 votes on the Board of Public Works for it. Now with Governor Hogan coming on, he took a much more objective look at it and said this thing doesn't make any sense because, the state's paying for everything. And the developers are getting all the profit. So that's off the table. The question is, what do you put here? I'd like to put an NBA, professional basketball arena, and professional hockey arena.
Pro
Right
basketball,
here, right here,
pro
in
hockey.
Baltimore. Right here. We are a major league town in Baltimore. Baltimore is a world-class town. It deserves 2 major league teams in basketball and hockey. That would bring all sorts of new people from the suburbs in to watch those teams. And they would get exposed to the good parts, the fact that Baltimore is a historic town of gritty neighborhoods and great places to live.
Those things, those images.
Yeah, got to bring them in. Got to bring them in from out of there, because if all they do is read the paper,
Or watch the local news.
Watch local news.
It's depressing.
You just get a kind of self-defeating series of negative things, and so the idea would be to bring people in, rich, middle class, white, black, anybody who lives outside of Baltimore, bring them in. And folks that have resources tend to be attracted by sports teams. So we create that magnet for them. And then the rest of the site we turn into a national or international youth sports complex with all sorts of soccer fields, football fields, baseball diamonds, basketball courts, and we recruit youth tournaments up and down the East Coast to come here, stay in our
That's
hotels,
smart business.
and play in our fields, and they'd be immaculately maintained and very desirable. That once again would bring new people into.
Basketball it's well loved across this city.
Hey, come on! Maybe we'll get Carmelo Anthony to pay for it.
Carmelo.
Oh, here's the other thing. We're not going to pay for the arenas with taxpayer money.
We're not?
No, they're going to be built by the private sector. Why is that? Hey, we've got a number of billionaires that are interested in this.
I saw what they're doing in Atlanta, this Mercedes-Benz stadium. Oh my heavens.